Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for all this invitation to be here, and all the organizers in Prevalence one. Congratulations. Well, the time is short, so we must go ahead. Which is the button here? Well, it has been a long way on man evolution from the past, the poor past, until the rich quality of life achieved today in healthy countries. Stones have been with a man as part of his life. We found stones as early as 7,000 years before Christ, and they have been there all the time until the present day. Then, what is new? What is changing? The man, the stone, both, other things? Well, environment affects the existence of all growth and welfare of all beings. External and internal factors will interfere. If we look to this slide, you will see that the conditions in Asia in the 20th century and for stones were the same in Europe around the 80s. And Europe, in the last century, this was the picture. If we look at it, we must think historically. Stones of the Western countries were common before the 20th century in males younger than 15 years, poor socioeconomic conditions, and begin to rapidly disappear after 1930. Current stones of developed countries are still common, but are also changing. Bladder stones disappear from the Western and are declining in developing countries, and probably due to improved nutrition. This is very well known from Blacklock. As soon as we give proteins after the Second War in Sicilia to people, the bladder stones disappear again. We know that consumption of food, the global consumption, and supply of vegetables in the last century, they change enormously, even in Africa. And if we look for the variation in vesical and renal stones in places like India, you will see the pattern change recently, and bladder stone disappear and renal stones came. The kidney stone is the stone of abundance, and the change in the incidence is very well known. If we look for the First and the Second War, and we see what's happened in Norway, what happened in Japan, we'll show with the war, everything goes down as soon as the war ends, the stones begin to appear. Look at what happened in Finland, the difference from bladder and renal stones. Look what's happened even in Japan between around 1965 and 2005, the difference of renal stones. America, probably here, show us, even in India, when we look for the hospital admission, a dramatically change in this period of time, but more important than this, the ratio from men and female changing from 14:1 to 4:1. And the same happened in my country, in Portugal. When we look, everything is changing in 90 and the 20 and the beginning of this century. We assist of the prevalence of stones come together, and men and women are more or less identical, with peaks a little bit different. And as the first study that we have done and the consequent studies in epidemiology, we can resume and say stones increase between the second and the fifth decade, and patterns for the 25, 29 years are similar to the 45, 49 years, 20 years ago. Age of first stone goes down, and we have smaller stones now. You can see and the same happened in 2009. We look for the children, and also the pattern of the children has changed dramatically. And in different studies that we have been conducted in Portugal, and trying to stratify everything, and we will give you two different ones, one from epidemiologic survey and the other one for people that had been treated between 1997 and 1999 by SWL in Lisbon. And we'll see the prevalence of stone is 7.2. And if we look for this stratification, we'll see that the first stone appear very early now compared to the past. And in the SWL group, we have the same. The ratio from men to women is now 1.3. Just to give you an idea of the peak of the graphs. And this was constant in all studies that we have done, not only surveys out in the hospital, and others have found the same. And the composition in Portugal also changed in all over Europe, and today somebody stressed here the same problem. Uric acid decrease in my country from 19 to 9%, infected stones from 15 to 4%, and increase on calcium oxalate stones. And again, small-sized stones. The staghorn disappear. But this is the same lesson that we can bring for the pets. You see the struvite stones going down, the oxalate stones going up due to different food consumption. Life expectancy has changed dramatically. And we know this all over the world. And we also know the role of diet and lifestyle. And we all know that the low intake of fiber, calcium, fluid, the high intake of animal protein and refined carbohydrate and oxalate-rich food is probably responsible for all these things that all of you know very well. And we also know that we have beneficial effects of high fluid intake, and Borghi give us this nice slide showing exactly this. The role of diet is important for obesity, metabolic syndrome, and cardiovascular disease, urolithiasis, and other conditions like gout are together. Yesterday, we have been talking about this, and we know that kidney stones are related with obesity, with hypertension, with heart disease, and even Randall plaque must be important for the stone, not only melamine, not only other drugs, but probably unknown conditions. In conclusion, we can say external risk factors change the kidney. Internal risk factors change the composition of urine, and we have the stone. But look for the future. Global temperature will go up, and we can see stones are going up also with the temperature. There is a very interesting study conducted by Brykovsky that shows us the projections in 50 years in the States, going global, the temperature high. We are expecting passing from 1 1.6 million to 25 million stones in 50 years, expecting this. Look what's going around. USA is well known for a very high in the past, is still the same in now. And look for Spain, for Great Britain, for Hungary, Holland, all together here, Germany, Austria. All this is what we have now in prevalence. And we have all over the world figures that go together and depends on which the country is. In Portugal now we have 7.21%, and in the past in the user, those are the figures. Now they are incredibly high. Older males more than 12%, younger black females more or less 1%, and between Asian and Hispanics have different figures. If you look for Spain in a lot of studies, we have figures for 14 and 10% in the highest, and between, if you compute average, 5% prevalence. In German, everybody knows those work. The incidence was 0.54, prevalence 4%, the ratio 1 to 1, and this has been increased dramatically. Even in Japan, we all know what's going on in Japan. They represent a steady increase in the 65, around 55%. More, the annual incidence has increased in all studies except during the first 3 decades of life. Again, this comes together with the monthly expenditure of food by the family of stone formers was significantly higher than the others. In conclusion, in Japan, 13% of men and 7% of women can be expected to suffer from a stone at least once in life. But look to this slide. Estonia, around 8,000 autopsies, and they give us a prevalence of 1.6%. But it's different from 41 to 51, much higher in men, and the opposite, higher in a woman if you are older than 51%. In Portugal, in different studies, the first one in 86, the second one 94, 98, the incidence comes up from 0.2 to 0.3, the prevalence from 7.2 to 8%, the ratio is 1:1 and still increasing. Just to give you the prevalence standardized to Europe is around 80% here. And the standardization for other countries doesn't matter. The same for incidence in 94, 98 is 1.4%. Recurrence, we have very high figures all over these countries. You can see here more than 50%, more than 50%. Different studies in Sweden, in Germany, and so on. You have 75 for German in a work in 1982, and in Portugal we have more than 7% also. And the first stone episode, only one is very small compared to more than one episode. And you have here summarized, and more than, if you go more and follow the patients more than 20 years, the recurrence is more than 70%. And recurrence between 94 to 98 is 1.3%. In Portugal, we have done another different thing, looking for other parameters. And it's important. If the family has a stone, the risk is very high. If you take medication regularly, the risk also very high. And if you drink water, mineral water, the risk is 3%. And this is for men and for women, and special in the young generation. And look, and I'm going to finish, what's happened. This study is very recently, has been published this year, and to summarize the change in prevalence and treatment of upper urinary tract and stone disease in the United Kingdom over the last 10 years. This is common for all Europe. Look, upper tract stones hospital episodes increased by 63%. SWL increased for 55% as a treatment. There was an increase of 127% in the ureterorhinoscopies, and there was a decline in open surgery of 83%. In conclusion, the present study gives us the trend, that the trend continues, and it is important implications for the workforce planning, training, service delivery, and research in the field of oral urolithiasis. Risk factors are important. Calcium oxalate and more at early age, with females showing patterns similar to male in rich countries. Age of a stone occurs in the early age, and difference in prevalence are evident between male and female when age stratification is considered. Dietary factors, the same is true for urinary factors, and the results from this study will help us to reduce the likelihood of stone formation and probably to understand what's going on. Thank you very much.